Well, here we are. I'm Tom Osman, and this is Whatever Comes Next. It's the podcast where I explore the world of underground and independent music making. And on today's episode, I am joined by Django Haskins of North Carolinian noir-pop group, The Old Ceremony, who have recently released their seventh album, Earthbound, on Robust Records. And a delightful record it is too. And there's a bit of a story behind this episode. Well, there's a cautionary tale behind this episode, and that cautionary tale involves the important matter of backing up your files. Because originally I spoke to Django at the beginning of September, a time that will forever be known by me as the time of the great laptop catastrophe of 2024, when my laptop, after years of trying to give me signals that it was time to be laid to rest, finally switched itself off and never came back. And at that time, I had 3 interviews on the laptop, one which I had almost finished editing and was about to post, and another 2, including this interview, well, the original interview with Django, which disappeared, never to be seen again. Now, I had to wait a while because I had sent my laptop to, or I'd taken it to a tech retrieval company in the hope that they could get the files back. Eventually, I found that they didn't, and now I have had to, with shame and great apology, go back to the various people I interviewed and ask if I could interview them again. And Django very graciously agreed to talk to me a second time. I was quite sad, particularly about this interview, because I thought the first one we had went really well. There were some great stories and some great insights from Django, and he was a great interviewee. But I'm happy to say that second time around, he was an equally great, gracious, witty, and entertaining and insightful interviewee. So I'm very happy with the results of this second interview. Django, as well as fronting the Old Ceremony, has an extensive solo career, and he has a number of other projects. He is a sometime member of, I don't know if it's quite right to call him a tribute band, but a kind of collective tribute to Big Star, featuring various different notable musicians, which is something that we talk about, as well as various other interesting checkpoints along Django's extensive career in the music world. But I'm not going to waffle on much longer. I'm going to let you hear from the man himself. But I will just say that you can check out The Old Ceremony at theoldceremony.com, where you can find information about releases. You can buy merch. You can watch videos. You can do all sorts of things. You can also follow the band on various social media at The Old Ceremony. You can also check them out on Bandcamp if you're interested in having digital copies of their albums. Guess where that's found? The Old Ceremony. And you can also check out Django's solo work if you go to Django Haskins on Bandcamp as well. And I think I should just mention the fact that I have an album that's recently come out, kind of a collection of industrial, electro, techno, ambient noise, with me doing some strange stories and vocal performances over the top of it. It's called Real Silence. It's a collaboration with Augurio Drama. You can find that on Bandcamp. On Drama Recorder, you can also find that at tomosmansounds.com. And you can follow me on all social media at Tom Osman Sounds. And I'm going to play a song from Earthbound. I'm not entirely sure which one, but it's going to be a good one. I'll play a little clip just now, and then I'll play the full track at the end. And with that, there is nothing left to be said but Django Haskins of The Old Ceremony. Take it away.
Slowing down, telling all your stories, trying one last time to make some sense. 'Cause it's a ghost town, no one here remembers Fridays at the big store, dancing like a fool.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay.
Well, first of all, thank you very much and
Yeah.
apologies. It was a lovely interview, and I'm so sorry that it's lost forever into the sands of nothingness.
We'll remember it.
We will remember it in our hearts.
Yes. Exactly.
So, how's your day going?
Oh, it's pretty good. Just shuttling kids to and from places. So starting at 2:30. So once that settles down, it'll be a lot easier. So I do have to pick up my son at 4:30. So I'll have to go, 4:15, 4:20, something like that.
No problem at all. That is the rock and roll lifestyle, right? That's what they say
It
it's going to be
is,
about.
yeah. Getting up at 6 and shuttling kids around in the afternoon. That's pretty much what I was dreaming about when I was a kid. Yeah.
And if I remember well, you're a guitar teacher as well,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So how
Guitar,
much?
bass, vocals.
Okay. So in terms of being a teacher, which one came first?
Uh, Guitar. Guitar was the initial one.
So there's a variety of different things I want to get into, and there's a couple of things that I'm going to have to ask you again because you had a couple
Sure.
of great stories that I want to hear again. But I have, even if nothing more than for your own entertainment, I do have some slightly different questions this time. So
Excellent.
no one else is going to know about it. But before we get into that, I do want to touch on the fact that we are promoting Earthbound, your latest
Yes, we
album,
are.
as the Old Ceremony, which I'm a big fan of, and I'm still enjoying it.
Excellent.
And I think last time we spoke, you were gearing up to releasing it, and I think you were going to be having kind of a big show around about the release date. So
Yep.
how did
So
that go?
we haven't done the big one here in North Carolina at the Cat's Cradle, but we this past weekend played in New York and DC, and then we're playing in Charlotte coming up as well. And it's been going great. It's been really nice to have it out there. It's
Yeah.
been sitting in our storage areas for a long time now. It seems like.
So maybe you told me before, you probably did, but thinking about the various different releases that you've had. So I know you've had several solo releases. You had Shadowlawn that was in 2018.
Hmm.
You've had Au Pair, I think,
Yep.
since the Old Ceremony album. You've got the Big
Yeah.
Star band as well.
Yeah.
You have had some releases with them, is that right? It's not just playing live.
The Big Star. Yeah,
Yeah.
we did a live double record and a live concert film, both of which are out. And yeah, so we did those. I did 3 EPs plus Shadow on the full length, plus Au Pair and the Big Star record since the last Old Ceremony record. So it's been
Yeah.
a lot, over the last 9 years.
But there has been a break of a few years since the last record you had out, right? How much of that was to do with the whole kind of COVID disruption?
Well, in terms of my own records, I put out two. I put out one last year and two the year before. But in terms of the Old Ceremony, it's been 9 years.
I feel
think
like I messed this up last time. What was it that you
that's-
put out last year?
keeping it honest, it was one called Lost World. It was under my Django Haskins, and it was all piano songs. Kind of my attempt at if Satie were a pop songwriter. That's
a cool
essentially
concept.
what it is. Yeah, yeah. I mean, so yeah, the simple childlike melody really works for my skill level on piano, and But yeah, I did that one last year, and then the previous year I did 2 EPs called Before Times One and Before Times Two. So yeah, I've been kind of churning it out here and there. But the Old Ceremony, it's been 9 years, so it's been quite a long time.
But in terms of your songwriting and releasing in general, nothing's actually really derailed you.
Right. I mean, I just haven't been touring, which
Yeah.
actually gave me more time because touring, a lot of it is dealing with auto problems and, just kind of boredom riding down very featureless highways. So when you're not doing that, you get a little extra time.
And something that I didn't ask you about last time, you were named after Django Reinhardt, is that right?
Yes, I was.
So do you think that if you hadn't decided to become a guitar player, that would have been a problem?
I think it would have been a curiosity in my office, where I worked, like, oh, how strange. Everyone I know is, named Robert. I don't think so. I mean, there is a bit of like name is destiny, and that as it turned out to be true. But I think if I were a computer scientist or a painter or something, that would all work just as well as I mean, it's a little too on the nose, to be honest. I mean, I was it would be better if I were a saxophone player, which I'm working on, by the way. But
Oh yeah, I think I remember you
yeah,
saying this
yeah,
last
yeah,
time.
I'm
So
working on it.
you are actually playing some saxophone on Earthbound, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, I am, and actually, I brought it on the road for the first time this past week, so that was fun.
So what was that like in terms of the kind of change in your on stage
it's
requirements?
it's really fun. I mean, it's one more thing to kind of juggle and manage, and a lot of the stages we were playing this time were pretty small, so we're kind of packed in there with all our stuff. So in that sense, it was a little tricky, but it was just fun to have that extra element coming in here and there. So yeah, it was really good.
Yeah. And something that I don't think I asked you about. So we talked last time about Valerie Solanas,
Hmm.
but I don't think I really talked with you about we talked a bit more about the lyrics and like about the concept of it. But one of the things I thought listening to the record, and this is maybe a bit of an annoying tendency of me, I like to listen to music and then think like, who does this remind me of?
Sure,
So
I
I
do
wonder
too.
if this is like a real reference point or if I'm just imagining this. It makes me think of Crime in the City by Neil Young. Is this a relevant reference point?
I mean, I'm a Neil Young fan, but I'm not familiar with that tune.
This is like from around about 1990. I mean, I know he has so many
Okay,
different eras.
I see. Yeah, I mean, I know his kind of '70s records pretty well, but yeah, I don't know that one.
I was teaching today and this topic came up and I can't remember what the name it was, but there's a type of evolution where two things evolve the same way but completely
Ah,
independently of each
kind of
other. So
parallel. Yeah,
yeah,
right.
like
Yeah,
parallel evolution. If I could remember the
uh,
name of it, then I guess this would be a good example of that.
that would be. Yeah,
But thinking of reference points, is it also correct to say that you originally took your name from the Leonard Cohen album, You
it
Schemed
is
for Love
indeed.
Ceremony? So what is it, if you can tell me, well, I mean, you can tell me simply or more in a more complicated way, what is it that you particularly love about Leonard Cohen?
I love Leonard. I mean, I love Leonard Cohen's lyrics mainly. I mean, his music is fine, but not overly listenable. But his lyrics are incredible,
Mm,
and they're so precise without being fussy. It's not in that kind of Victorian kind of Elvis Costello, like every little nook has a tchotchke in it. I mean,
mm,
his are very clean, but very, very precise and very emotionally precise.
yeah.
So I find his lyrics to be really inspiring in that way. And I think when I was putting together the old ceremony 20 years ago, he was definitely a touchstone in the sense of an artist who had gotten better with age. I mean, I
Mm,
wasn't really interested in kind of, live fast, die young, leave a good looking corpse. It was too late for all of those things. And so I really want, and the music I really like, it's not just for kids. And so I was looking at different examples of people who I felt got even better as they got older.
mm,
Leonard Cohen was one. Nick Cave is another. Tom Waits, Serge Gainsbourg, Astor Piazzolla. I mean, these are people who, they're better at 50 than they were at 20. And
mm,
I think that's a really interesting thing that kind of gets overlooked in kind of rock and roll music, where
yeah.
it's all kind of a teen fetish.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you think that do you feel that there were elements of things that you were doing musically when you were 20 or 30 that you would feel it was ridiculous to go back to doing? And I
Yes.
think, like, what kind of
Yeah.
things?
I mean, mostly just bad writing. And I think I was just much more, as a writer, kind of sure of what I was saying and felt, had something important to say. Whereas now I'm much more likely to kind of see more than one side of things and,
Mm,
kind of see things in a little bit from more than one perspective. So, so yeah, I mean, yeah, there's definitely something about the youthful, brash, uh, oversimplistic understanding of things that I would not want to repeat.
and anything from the performance side? Because I guess, if you're bringing up Nick Cave, for example, obviously there was there were the birthday party years,
Right.
which were more kind of aggressive and abrasive and confrontational. I mean, I guess he's still, he's I don't want to say he's mellowed out, but he's definitely evolved. I mean,
He's mellowed out.
is there anything in
Yeah.
terms of performance where you think like, oh, I couldn't go back to doing that?
Yeah. I mean, I used to do things like go out and just stand on the table in front of people and just demand their attention as I played, and I don't really do that anymore. I kind of, I don't know. I don't know if I mellowed out. I was never a punk rocker per se. I just kind of like rock music, but I still like rock music. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's just more of a less. I mean, I guess it's less entitled, to kind of take a term from modern discourse. I don't feel like I'm entitled to everybody's attention. I feel like if I can earn people's attention, that's great. And if not, I'm still doing it because I love to do it. So I think there's a little bit more humility involved, beaten into me by 35 years of the music business, I think.
Would you, now on that sense of having things being into you, would you say that you have progressively become more confident as you perform, or has it ever gone in the opposite direction?
I think I've always been pretty comfortable on stage. I mean, I've done it since I was like 5, I mean, I've really always been on stage, and I've always felt pretty comfortable in different situations. The Big Star show is an example where I was, it was kind of on stage with a lot of people who I had always looked up to. And they were really kind for the most part. And it was, it's just become kind of a family kind of thing, but still, can be quite intimidating if you think about it too much, which I, try not to do. But I was invited, they're doing a 5-piece, a quintet version of it with just the kind of big name guys in the band, the REM, Wilco, DBs, Big Star, and Posies. And they've been touring, they're in Europe right now. And they came through here, and they didn't have the rest of us, partake, but they did invite me to come play saxophone on a couple of songs. And that was nerve-wracking because I'd never played on somebody else's gig in public. And here I was going to play with, these guys who are my friends, but still they've never heard me play saxophone. And I had 2 days to prepare because they asked me 2 days before the show. So that was nerve-wracking, but I felt like I did it, and that felt like an accomplishment in and of itself, no matter what, just because I did it,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think I've always felt pretty comfortable on stage, but, I think the goal is, with this band, the band has been together for 20 years, and, what we're really trying to do is, it's all about kind of communication with, amongst ourselves, and trying to, make playing any particular song, real kind of a present experience rather than just like a recitation. And because everyone is, we're all pretty attuned to each other musically, it often happens that way. So that's the real goal, I think, for us at this point.
And thinking about the adapting the music and the songs to the live performances, you've got very beautifully constructed songs. How much room and desire is there for improvisation when you're on stage?
There's always a little bit. And often what we'll do is we'll have a section of a song that will be pretty open. And in kind of a jazz tradition, we have solo sections too for different people and things like that. But it's true, the songs are fairly tightly constructed for the most part. But what we'll do is, a lot of time when we come in to a rehearsal, or even at the beginning of a gig, if it's a kind of a low key gig, we'll just start with an improvisation. Like, we'll just start playing something. Someone will play something, and we'll all kind of come in and see if we can build it into something. And we know what the first song's going to be, so it'll be in the key of the first song. And once we've either reached something really good or it's not going to happen, we come into the song. So we do have these moments, and we give ourselves a little bit of space for that. And that's probably the most fun of all of it,
Yeah. And is that something that you were always doing in the band?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, after the first few years when we had kind of an 11-piece with, cello, violin, trumpet, saxophone, accordion, guitar, bass, drums, organ, violin, vibraphone, we had to be a little bit more parts oriented, because it was just gonna be chaos. But with the 5-piece, which has been the last 15 years, I think we kind of thrive on that kind of thing.
And what was that like logistically in those early years when you did have an 11-piece band?
It was local. um, because really there was no way to take 11 people on the road. We actually did take 7 people on the road, which means our current band plus our original piano player and cellist. And we did that for about 5 years like that. You know, you get good at kind of cramming into small spaces and not expecting a lot of room on the stage. And with with the 11 piece, it was really just about kind of creating an atmosphere in a fixed kind of situation. It wasn't, like I said, wasn't a touring kind of proposition, but it was a lot of fun because you don't really hear that kind of sound much.
Yeah.
Because it's impractical, and so that was really neat. And I think that was probably one of the factors that allowed us to kind of gain traction early on as a band locally.
And thinking like logistically, when you're up on stage and you have that many people playing different instruments, how much more difficult is that to get, like a good balanced overall sound?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty hard to do. And one of my big solutions for the first few years was I just hardly played any guitar. I mean, I would have my guitar. I was the only guitar player, but I just decided, well, someone's got to make some space, and so I'm just gonna not play much guitar. And I was tired of power pop bands and things I've been doing for a long time. So I was ready for that. But yeah, I think it's tricky. I think it comes down to the arrangements. I think more than anything, having pieces come in and out and having people self-regulate and only play on certain sections is a big part of it.
What kind of impact do you think playing in that configuration has had on the band once you streamlined it down?
Well, I think it got us thinking about textures in a way that we might not have if we had started just as a plain rock band, standard kind of guitar, bass, drums rock band. So now, our keyboard player, Mark, who plays organ and vibraphone, he now covers all keys things. So he's, also does piano type stuff. But what he's been doing for many years now is he has guitar pedals that he's plugging his keyboard into, and he's tweaking the delay pedals and all kinds of things to create extra textures in the sound beyond just what you would find in a normal keyboard part. So there, and our violin player Gabe, he also goes through lots of pedals and does mellotron pedals and delay pedals and all kinds of crazy stuff. So there are all these extra kind of wider screen textures that we may not have even thought of had we not started with all these extra instruments.
Yeah, and that kind of like sense that there are sort of textures that you could hypothetically create.
Right.
Now, there is something that I asked you last time that I have to ask you again, because I love this story. It was one of the things I was most sad to lose, was the story about you playing with Chuck Berry. So please retell the story of how you ended up on a bill with Chuck Berry.
So so we early on we got a booking agent out in LA who booked us for a decade, and he was great. David Strunk was his name, and he would book us in wherever he could get us. Honestly, we were a young band and didn't have a lot of pull, but he worked at a pretty big agency, and so occasionally he would get us opening slots with like Cake or something like that. And this particular one was a one-day festival in rural New Jersey, kind of western New Jersey, and it was let's see, I have the poster here somewhere. Oh yeah, it's okay. So it was the English Beat, Apples in Stereo, the Smithereens, Live,
that's right.
Fountains of Wayne,
The Alarm.
The Alarm, that's right, and Chuck Berry, and us. And that was it. Crazy, just crazy. We hung out with the Smithereens and the Apples in Stereo, and they were all pretty nice, and we just had a nice time. But Chuck Berry, has had it with all of this stuff. And so he shows up, gets paid, puts the money in his car, plays, gets back in his car, and leaves, right? So I was, ready to not meet Chuck Berry. Like I was hoping I was going to see him play, but so the morning of the show, we were all staying in the same hotel, all the different bands. The Alarm was, drinking at the hotel bar, so anyway, in the morning, I went down to check my email at the computer there because this was '07 or something, when one still do that kind of thing. And a gentleman came and sat down next to me, this black guy, and I was on high alert for Chuck Berry, but this guy looked way too young to be Chuck Berry. So I was just like, well, this isn't Chuck Berry, and I don't want to be, that guy who's like, hey, are you Chuck Berry? When he's obviously not Chuck Berry. And I'm thinking all this as I'm kind of typing and looking at him out of the corner of my eye. And finally, I kind of get up courage and I just say, good morning. And he's like, yeah, good morning. And I was like, are you here for the festival? And he's like, yes, I am. And I said, well, oh, yeah, we are too. What do you do? And he looks at me and goes, I don't like to say. And then turns back and finishes his email. And I knew at that point it was Chuck Berry. He was just really well preserved. And, sure enough, same guy up on stage later that afternoon. So yeah, I didn't do really well talking to Chuck Berry, to be perfectly honest. But at least I had a conversation with him.
At least you had a conversation for sure. I've had less meaningful conversations with people that I admire for sure.
Yeah.
Where I've been like, oh, I'm going to talk to them, and then it's like I can't think of anything at all well to say.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting, like the lineup to me, because I was living in mainland Europe for a few years, and I got the sense that, like in Czech Republic, because I was there for a few years, like you'd see these lineups and you'd go, oh, there's like, I don't know, like Papa Roach and Tom Jones or something like that on the same lineup. And it would be so bizarre. But I somehow didn't think that happened in America. So was this the kind of thing that you might see pop up in other places, just a completely seemingly random lineup altogether?
I don't know. I mean, we've never been booked for anything like that since, and I would love to be the random unknown in a lineup like that again. But yeah, I don't know. I know what you're talking about though. We played in the Czech Republic actually. And I mean, it was a festival, and I remember them being just really random, things that we had forgotten existed, bands, and they're playing, and then, I'm sure it is. There are a lot of festivals, like there are a lot of town festivals or county festivals where they just get who they can get. It's not really well thought out and programmed, but yeah, I don't know.
So who was on directly before Chuck Berry?
I think the Smithereens were right before him.
Okay.
And we were right after him.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the English Beat was right after us. So it was a very strange.
Following Chuck Berry.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a strange day. Strange day.
And thinking about touring and playing outside of the US, what has your experience been like in general going further afield?
Well, we loved it. I've done a few tours, like kind of solo tours in Europe and in the UK. And then the band, we did one kind of longish one down the, the kind of Teutonic corridor from Netherlands to Germany, Switzerland, Czech Republic, and then we did a little bit of France. And we loved it. We have it's interesting. We have a sound that's a little bit, in some ways, more European sounding than a lot of bands, which we thought would be a real selling point. But of course, had we come in with, a piece of straw in our mouths and chaps, I think we would have gotten probably even a better reception as really, truly American. But one of Gabe, our violinist, he grew up, his half of his family is in Switzerland, and he speaks German and Italian. And Mark, the vibraphonist, who I mentioned, his family is German and Danish, and he speaks German. And so, we had a lot of connection over there already. So it felt very natural, to be honest. It's just very expensive to get over there and do all the things you have to do to make it happen. But it was an incredible experience that, to be able to do it.
And from that point of view of the expenses, I remember when I was a kid and I was first getting really passionate about music, I sort of had this misty-eyed concept that bands make a lot of money and, releasing music makes you money and touring makes you money. But I get the impression with a lot of people that it's like going to play live is something that you actually have to fund. So
yeah. I mean, it is. It's more so now than ever. But the music business, don't get me started because it's just so depressing. But what streams of income there were once are even less. And so, it's become a thing where you just play music. I mean, you really honestly just have to do it. If you're going to do it for your whole life, you have to do it because you want to do that, not for any kind of reward, because it's just for the great majority of artists, if you're barely making a living, that's a huge accomplishment. So, for those of us who are not that interested in just being merchandise salesmen, which is kind of what you have to do. I mean, T-shirts are probably the best way to be a band. Is to just be a T-shirt company, because you can't digitize them yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's nothing good about the music business. I have nothing good to say about it. But it is so clear. It's always been so venal, and now it's venal without even the reward, even the carrot
Yeah.
that it once had. That it kind of is freeing in some ways. It's like, well, even if you were to achieve this initial idea of what is success, it really wouldn't be that great. And so, why do anything that you don't really want to do now?
Yeah. And then thinking about for you personally, when you think about all the different musical projects that you've got and all the different ways in which you can devote your time to those different projects, like how do you decide how you're going to divide your time? Obviously, you've got the family, you've got the teaching that you do as well,
Right.
but amongst everything else, how do you kind of fit everything in and decide what's going to get more of a priority and more time?
I think there are seasons, so this is definitely a season for the band where we've been really busy. We made this record, we've been promoting it, we got lots of shows, we're just doing a lot. And so that's the main priority. I'm not thinking about writing, I'm not thinking about solo anything or any other projects. Once this record comes out, there will probably be a little bit of a lull. I mean, it's out, but I mean, once we're through the cycle of playing and all that stuff, and there'll probably be a little bit of a lull, and hopefully we'll come back and start a new record. But then that would be a time to kind of maybe turn to something else. I mean, time is very limited in general in life, but also as a parent of young kids. So I get essentially there's one kind of slot that I can do something in any particular period of time, and so right now that's definitely the Old Ceremony.
From a creative point of view, and this is something that I've sort of tried to figure out for myself, when you do have a variety of other different priorities and you maybe say, okay, I can like carve out this free time for myself, how easy or difficult is it for you then to go, right, this is like a free hour, I'm going to be creative, rather than just like you're strolling around eating a croissant and like, oh, an idea comes to me, great, I can write it down.
Yeah, there's none of that. No. Yeah, it's very unsexy. It's just like, okay, the time's ticking. I've gotten pretty good because of the discipline of writing weekly that I did for a few years recently. Gotten pretty good at just sitting down and just getting to it when I have an hour. Most of my free time actually right now, that's not with the band, is on practicing saxophone, and I've been really working every day, every morning. 7:30 in the morning, working on saxophone. So. I do have goals and not a lot of time. So I try not to waste it. I'd like to hide my phone under a mountain. That would be really nice. That would help a lot, I think.
I can relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned so that you got into a process of having a weekly writing practice. So how did that come about?
It was through friends. When I lived in New York in the 90s, there was a songwriting circle kind of thing, meeting at this guy, Jack Hardy's house or apartment in the West Village. And he was an old, like kind of first line folky from like Gertie's Folk City days, like, Dave Van Ronk and Ramblin' Jack Elliott and Dylan, that era. And he had hosted this for a decade by the time I started going to it. Suzanne Vega came out of that circle, and some other people, but and I went to it maybe for a year or two. It wasn't like the center of my experience, but for a lot of these guys who were in this group, it was the center of their New York experience and as writers. And so they started up a virtual one essentially, and everyone is kind of in different places, a lot on the West Coast and some in various places around the States. And so they just invited a bunch of friends who had been part of that group back in the 90s, and replicated the format of it, which is that you bring in a new song every week, you play it, you get 5 minutes of feedback, next song, and that's that's how it goes. And it was amazing. Really got me through COVID. In fact, I saw one of my friends who I met through that group at our show in New York. He lives in the Bronx and came down. So, real life intersected with it eventually.
Yeah, that's really cool. Did you get ideas and, material from that you actually, brought to recordings ultimately?
The entire Earthbound album is from those.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
and
very cool.
as is my last solo record, Lost World, all from those as well. And there are about 90 left that we haven't done yet. So for the foreseeable future, they'll probably be from those.
Oh, that's fascinating. And so thinking about what you then took for the album, how much did you sort of have an idea of the whole of the record?
Not a whole lot, honestly. We just kind of went song by song, and we went through, but we probably played 40 different songs, just to see what would work and what felt good, and then started narrowing it down. And we recorded 13 and kept 11. Yeah, we didn't, we really didn't choose them for continuity. That's never been our strong suit as people who make records. But I think, then looking at them, themes kind of emerged as they do. And, there was different kind of musical modalities, but they're ones that were familiar to us. Like we had developed each of those in other songs at other times. So it kind of represented the range of our stuff, from kind of folky to kind of jazzy to more rock to, like atmospheric kind of stuff, so there was, that felt like it was representative. And I think we called it Earthbound because it's a song on the record, but also just the feeling of this time of life for us. Several of us have kids, and the way that kind of grounds you, but also hurdles you ever faster towards death, is both worked. The Earthbound worked for both of those things. And then the cover with the bear painting that we found, our drummer Nate kind of pointed out that it was like the bear had come out of hibernation, much like the band. So we liked that idea of rebirth.
Yeah, I can see the connection there. On the topic of the cover and like the album art in general, I saw the sleeves for the record, and it made me think of maybe like Leonard Cohen, but like it has that kind of like 1960s kind of folk record vibe to it, like with the way that the text is done as well. Was that a conscious decision to kind of like reference that?
Yeah, I think it was, so I wrote a little essay that goes in the liners and everything. And, I was thinking of those kind of Blue Note records where some blowhard jazz critic would write an essay about this record that, is so great that no one else should be saying anything about it. So I think I was thinking about records that I kind of grew up with. But yeah, I definitely can see the 60s or 70s style in there. The guy who did all the layout for us, Nathan Golub, who's a great designer, but he also did my Au Pair project record. He's also a great musician. He plays pedal steel and guitar, and he really got the brief. Once I showed him the photo of the painting, which was a local artist that I had found, and kind of gave him the content, he really laid it out just how I would have hoped.
Yeah. I mean, that's really nice when you give guidelines to someone and they come up with something on their own that really like captures the idea you had in mind without you having to explicitly tell them.
It's rare and it's wonderful. Yeah.
To your point about the variety on the album, and there is a lot of really charming variety from one track to another in terms of the styles. One of the tracks that stood out to me was Hangman's Party, and the fact that you've got this like very kind of like 70s soul falsetto on it. Like was there any particular inspiration behind that?
No. So I wrote the song actually low, an octave lower. The vocal was in my normal kind of baritone range. But what was happening is when we'd play it live, the vocal would kind of get lost. And I couldn't sing. You can't really sing loud down there. It's just kind of is what it is. And so, but we liked more or less the rest of it. And so just on a lark, I sang it one time in rehearsal an octave higher in a just absolutely absurd range, of falsetto the entire time. And, we just kind of liked it. And so I ended up doing it. It was right before we recorded it. And that's how I do it live now. And it lifted the melody out on top of everything else. And it gave more space to it. And it made the whole track kind of funkier, as you said.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it works really well. Like it doesn't come across as a parody. Like there's an element of like playfulness to it, but it sounds still authentic.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I hope. I mean, I think of like kind of Beck doing what was her name, Sandra or something?
Yeah. Oh no, Deborah.
Deborah, yeah. Which was, it's really fun, but it was also, it didn't really, to me, it didn't age well. It was just like, that felt like a parody, and I didn't want it to be like that. It's hard to sing a song completely in falsetto and not reference Prince, I mean, it's just impossible almost. So it's inevitable in some ways, but I'm not like, while I admire him, I'm not an particularly active Prince fan or anything like that. I think it's just, that's an area of my voice I hadn't used much,
Yeah. And I brought up Valerie Solanas before, and I just thought it's that's sort of one of your most obvious references to a specific character in a song on the album. This playful song about the shooting of Andy Warhol, this kind of like wry, tongue-in-cheek commentary on it. And I was thinking to myself, to what extent, when you're writing songs about characters, about people, do you feel like you have to empathize with them?
I think 100% you have to. And I think for me, in a lot of ways, I mean, it is funny, the idea, I mean, the true fact that RFK was assassinated the day after she shot Andy Warhol and buried the story about her shooting Andy Warhol, which is just hilarious. I mean, if the whole idea is kind of revenge and notoriety, and then you lose your notoriety because some other damn man stepped on your spotlight, it was just too
as
perfect.
They always do.
Yeah, ain't it typical to step on my spotlight? I find it really, really important to empathize with anybody that I'm pretending to be or writing about. I learned from Randy Newman that lesson, and and even to implicate myself when necessary, in it, and that's something that I think he does really, really, really well. I think when I dug into Valerie Solanas' story and about all the abuse that she'd endured, and how it's, it's very understandable how someone would get to the point of just so much rage against men who controlled her, to do something like shoot Andy Warhol. So I'm really not making fun of her at all. I mean, I'm actually, it's meant to be a very real story, about her experience. I mean, it's very intense, but if you read anything about her, she was incredibly intense. Everything the Society for Cutting Up Men, the Scum Manifesto was, her work, and and it just went on from there. And with the details that I tried to include, it follows. It checks out.
Yeah. And on like the other end of the spectrum, or at least the way it seems to me, like you got tracks like Easy to Believe that sound like they could be a lot more autobiographical. So how do you sort of navigate how much of yourself and your own personal experiences to put into your songs?
A fair amount of those songs are, personal experiences of some sort or another, or at least drawing on them. I mean, they're not purely autobiographical, but at least drawing on experiences that I've had. I think, I'm not that concerned about it, because when I do write about, say, the drying up of Lake Mead, which is like low tide in the desert, or Ed Koch choosing not to come out as gay for his entire political career, and then kind of discovering it was too late when he finally tried. With those things, I find them moving too. I mean, it doesn't have to be about me for me to be emotionally invested in it. So I don't really see them as that different, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, I think also, I think that's a difference between writing now and writing when I was 25, is I don't write nearly as much that is purely autobiographical, it's more drawing on true emotional experience, but in the context of something else.
Mm. Would you say that there was a point in your career or your life as a musician where you felt like you had to express yourself through your music, like it was important to somehow get something out that you were not going to be able to represent in another way?
I mean, I think that's still true for me. I think it's kind of my therapy in some ways, and it's also just my way of grappling with, kind of philosophical problems of life, and mortality and all kinds of things. Here Comes Another Cloud is about essentially depression, and anxiety, and so there's lots of that in there. I mean, I think that's the thing that probably drives me, and I would imagine a lot of people, to do it in the first place, because there's not a ton of external encouragement to do something like this and in our society. So you really need to have a motivation beyond that.
And thinking about external motivation or lack of, and rewards or lack of, maybe for someone that doesn't have the experience of actually putting a record together, what are the, like, kind of the costs that you would say at this point that someone should expect if they want? Now, obviously, you got a different kind of configuration of a band that's going to have different implications, but just in general, if you want to go right, I've written something, I want to go rehearse with a band, I want to record in the studio, I want to get whoever it is that's going to record it for us, we're going to mix it, etc., etc., we're going to put it out on vinyl perhaps. What are, like, all of the costs that you think that you would have to expect to be able to do that?
Well, it's really variable, because at this point you don't have to do half of those things. You don't have to go to a studio. You don't have to hire an engineer. You don't have to put it out on vinyl, in which case the cost is almost nothing. So there are ways to do it now that are, reasonable to do, that are virtually free apart from the time and, having some of the equipment yourself, but it's not, the bar is fairly low in terms of those kinds of things. Now, to do it and realize whatever it is that you're trying to realize, artistically, that may or may not be possible depending on what you're trying to do. For us, a lot of it is about being a live band. So we did have to do all those things. And if we record ourselves, it's not going to be as good as, with a live band, because we're not just one at a time doing things. We're doing it all in a room. We need a lot of equipment and we need a lot of expertise. So in that sense, we kind of had to do that. And then, in terms of vinyl, CDs we are the label that that helped us put this out, kind of insisted on us making CDs, even though we kind of didn't really want to. And it turns out that there's still some people who do CDs, and that's great. But, if you don't have some sort of physical object, it's almost like it didn't happen. My last 3 records, solo records, didn't have any physical element. And, I know they exist because they're online, but I don't have that, and people don't have that to interact with. And I think, if you're able to we had to do kind of a Indiegogo kind of Kickstarter type of thing to pay for vinyl. We didn't have funding for it. But I'm glad that we did, because I think the artifact is important. And I think that's coming back, that recognition that the artifact itself is meaningful.
I also I kind of like that whole Kickstarter style approach. Like, I've had a couple of bands where they've done those campaigns and I've contributed for them, and it kind of makes you feel as a fan somehow sort of connected a little bit more to the band. It's like I made some small contribution to this happening.
Yeah, I mean, there's a democratization involved with people actually helping to fund something that I think, I think it makes a community feeling, which is what we need. There's no star maker machinery for most bands, and so it's really just about you and the community that you create around your band.
Yeah. Now, I guess probably following from the way you answered my last question, there isn't a simple answer to this, but do you feel like if you don't want to have a kind of live band style of recording, that there isn't really any need to go into a studio? Or do you still think that there's something that you can get out of that you wouldn't if you were just recording separately?
I think if you were recording separately, there's no need to go into the studio. I mean, I really do. I think the real benefit of the studio over all of the things that are available to musicians now online and via their laptop is the ability to record it in a great live room with a group of people at the same time. Beyond that, I think you can get good sounds at your house, easily.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't, I wouldn't do it. In the last four, my last four solo records I did here in my studio here, which is, not a big studio, and, I just did it myself. So.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, so thinking about your years that you've had in the music world, and this could be in a variety of different aspects. When you look back now, I mean, maybe it's a little bit difficult to say when you began, because as you said, you were on stage since the age of 5, but you kind of think like when you would say you were sort of in the music world, like really as a, I don't know, recording or touring performer, or, playing shows regularly. Is there anything that you look back on now and you think, I really wish that someone had told me this at the beginning, that it took like 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years to figure out?
I think the biggest thing that I regret in my, my ultra striving years, which is to say mostly my New York years, is not recognizing the importance of generosity and supporting a community and supporting other people, and of just openness. I think I had a real strong idea of what I wanted to do and who I was and what I was going to do with it. And I think that closed me off to a lot of really interesting stuff that I could have done. I mean, I had a great experience doing it, but I think that's my big regret, I think. And, and that goes beyond music. That's just a personal development thing that I just hadn't worked out yet.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of things like that it's kind of, you look back and you go, oh, I wish I'd figured that out, but you kind of have to go through a lot of time in order to like learn that hard lesson. Yeah,
exactly.
And so going back specifically to the album Earthbound, and it's on Robust Records, right? That's
right.
Who's put it out. So you mentioned the CD. We've talked about the vinyl. What is the best way in general for people to get hold of the album, if not when seeing you performing live?
Well, at our website, which is just theoldceremony.com, there we have a store where you can get vinyl, you can get CDs of other records as well. You can get T-shirts and tote bags, you can everything. So that's the best way because it's the most direct. And beyond that, if you are one who has transcended the material world, you can just download it on Bandcamp and buy it that way. That's a great way to support us in that way.
And thinking about people keeping up to date with shows that are coming up and just following the band in general, what's the best way for people to do that?
Again, just through our website or any of our, we're on Facebook and Instagram and all of that. Any of those are great. You can follow us on any of those, and they will all let you know when we're playing and kind of try to get you to the gates as quickly as possible. So yeah, that's the best way to do it. Just follow us.
And you didn't have to come up with any convoluted names because no one else had taken the old ceremony.
That's right. Yeah. Also, we did it 20 years ago. So, now there are probably a lot of people trying to get it.
But you got there first.
That's right.
Django, it was a great pleasure to talk to you again.
Great pleasure too. Yeah, you too. I'm happy to talk to you again.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Until next time.
All right. Bye.
Ciao.
Telling all your stories, trying one last time to make some sense. 'Cause it's a ghost town, no one here remembers Fridays at the big store, dancing like a fool. You gave it all your love, laid it on the table, kept it in the north of but it's hard to pack for other weather. You don't want to bring a sweater when it's sunny here. You gave it all your love,